Julian Charles John Lennon was born at 6:50 in the morning on April 8, 1963, at Sefton General Hospital in Liverpool, weighing just under 8 pounds. That same week his father's band, the Beatles, hit #1 with Please Please Me. John wasn't there. He was playing a club in London when Cynthia went into labor. 3 weeks later, manager Brian Epstein became Julian's godfather, and the baby was photographed by the press like a Beatles prop. When John finally saw his son, he reportedly asked, "Who's going to look after it?" He didn't call him his son, just it. Cynthia quietly listed John's job as musician on the birth certificate, not Beatle. But that didn't stop fans from tracking down their home. Gates had to be installed to keep them away. Julian was named after John's mother, Julia, who was killed by a car when John was 17. His middle name, Charles, came from Cynthia's father, something John disliked. In a 1964 letter to his Aunt Mimi, he called it a compromise he never wanted. That letter sold for $28,000 decades later. John would later admit Julian was conceived after too much whiskey and wasn't planned or wanted. Beatles press officer Tony Barrow once said John even considered adoption, but Epstein offered money to keep the family together. Becoming a father at 22, John later told a therapist, was his biggest mistake. When Julian was 6 months old, he was placed on a blanket during a Beatles photo shoot at Abbey Road. John barely looked at him. Cynthia comforted the baby between flashes while the photos appeared in magazines worldwide. By his first birthday, Julian had been featured in 34 Beatles-related publications without permission. Cynthia tried suing one magazine, but the court ruled minors had no rights to their own image. Julian's first word wasn't mama or dada but Beatles. He heard their music constantly. Each evening he'd wait at the window hoping John would come home, often crying when it wasn't him. By age 2, he recognized John's voice better on the radio than in person. Cynthia said it broke her heart. When she told John, he just said, "He'll get over it." In 1965, John filled notebooks with sketches of Julian but spent only 11 days with him that year. Around that time, John began using heroin and was often distant, even at dinner. One drawing depicted Julian as a grown man with a syringe, a chilling prediction that Cynthia found in 1967. John brushed it off as dark humor. Years later, those notebooks resurfaced in legal disputes over his estate. By 1970, John told Cynthia that Julian had arrived too early for his rock and roll lifestyle. A psychologist later testified that John displayed signs of narcissistic parenting, putting his art above his child. He even considered sending Julian to boarding school at age 2, but Cynthia threatened to tell the press. In 1966, John met Yoko Ono at a small art gallery, an encounter that quickly unraveled his marriage. Within weeks he was calling Yoko late at night while Cynthia slept. By spring 1967, Cynthia found love notes and John admitted, "I've found my soulmate." During the filming of Magical Mystery Tour, 4-year-old Julian sat beside Ringo Starr, who gave him candy and attention while John ignored him, taking calls from Yoko. John threw a camera in anger during one argument. It missed Julian's head by inches. Julian later said Ringo was more of a father to him that week than John ever was. One day Julian brought home a crayon painting of his nursery school friend Lucy surrounded by stars. When John asked what it was, Julian said, "It's Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds." That inspired one of the Beatles' most famous songs, though John later denied the connection, letting drug rumors swirl. Julian only learned the truth years later from a magazine. When John divorced Cynthia in 1968, she received a small settlement in $2,400 a year in child support. During the 6-week process, John saw Julian twice. Once he smashed a guitar during a custody argument. On another visit, they spent 30 supervised minutes together while Yoko waited outside. John's lawyer said he wanted minimal contact. Cynthia testified that John told her Julian reminded him of his failures. On Julian's 6th birthday in 1969, John was in Montreal with Yoko holding a bed-in for peace. He sent a telegram that said, "Happy birthday, Jules. Sorry, busy with peace. Love, Dad." It arrived after the party. John never called. Later, he would say in an interview that Julian had been a Saturday night mistake, while Sean, his son with Yoko, was the real one planned and wanted. Julian read that at 17 and it broke him. In 1981, Atlantic Records offered Julian a deal after hearing demos recorded in his home studio. His debut album Veloute was produced at George Martin's Air Studios in Montserrat, costing $400,000. The song Veloute came from a quiet period at his mother's cottage, where he had retreated after his father's murder. When the album was released in October 1984, it debuted at number 17 on Billboard and went platinum by December. The single Too Late for Goodbyes reached number 5. Its video using home footage that Yoko Ono tried to block. Critics praised his voice as hauntingly similar to John's. By year's end, Julian earned $780,000 in royalties. He toured North America in 1985, selling out shows before losing his voice from exhaustion and smoking. 11 performances were canceled, costing hundreds of thousands in refunds. In his diary, Julian wrote that he felt like he was chasing a ghost. His follow-up single, Say You're Wrong, was overshadowed by tabloid rumors of a romance with model Elle Macpherson. Despite the chaos, he donated half of his 1985 income to cystic fibrosis research. That same year, engineers discovered a tape labeled, For Julian 1979, containing unreleased John Lennon demos, including an alternate version of Beautiful Boy. Yoko Ono's lawyers quickly blocked Julian's access, leading to a costly legal battle. Years later, Julian accused her of erasing his heritage. She never replied. In the 1990s, Julian's music career slowed amid record label battles and burnout. He turned to more personal writing and environmental causes. His 1991 single Saltwater, about caring for the earth, became a major hit in the UK and Australia, raising funds for the World Wildlife Fund. But he continued to face public backlash for his Lennon surname and ongoing disputes with Yoko over the estate. John's will had left Julian a small trust while Sean inherited the majority. After years in court, Julian settled for roughly $20 to $25 million in some of his father's personal belongings, including the original Hey Jude lyrics. By the late 1990s, after more legal fights revealed Yoko had lost millions from the estate in poor investments, Julian withdrew from fame. He turned to photography, traveling the world documenting indigenous cultures and environmental struggles. His 2007 documentary Whale Dreamers followed the Mirning people of Australia and their bond with whales, earning awards and inspiring him to found the White Feather Foundation, named after a story John had told him, that seeing a white feather meant everything would be okay. The foundation funded clean water, education, and environmental protection projects across the world. After his mother Cynthia's death in 2015, Julian created a scholarship in her name to support girls' education. He also reconnected with Lucy Vaughton, the childhood friend who inspired Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, before she died of lupus. Julian released a charity single,